Hey, tonight we explore the tranquil morning hours of a knight's existence, where duty begins before the world awakes. In this forgotten century, valor isn't found merely in battle, but in the sacred quiet of dawn devotion. The weight of chain, mail against your shoulders, the cool stone beneath your knees in the chapel, the amber glow of candles illuminating ancient texts. These are the moments that forge a true knight's soul. You'll feel the morning dew dampen your boots as you cross the courtyard. Hear the distant calling of birds announcing a new day in a world where honor is everything. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What time is it where you are? Which city are you watching from tonight? Dim your lights, turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and settle in. Let your thoughts wander gently into the past. Your eyes open to darkness, not the complete blackness of deepest night, but the grey-blue shadows of approaching dawn. The straw mattress rustles beneath you as you shift, your body recognizing the hour before your mind fully wakes. For 15 years, since your dubbing ceremony at 1:20, your body has known this hour intimately, the hour of the first, vigil. Cool air brushes against your face, carrying the scent of dew-dampened stone and wood smoke from the dying kitchen fires below. The chamber is simple, stone walls hung with tapestries gifted by your lord's lady to keep the chill at bay. Your armor stands assembled on its wooden frame beside the narrow window, a silent sentinel catching the first hint of dawn's approach. You swing your feet to the rush-strewn floor, feeling the familiar scratch of dried herbs and straw against your calloused soles. Your breath forms small clouds in the morning air. Spring has come to Christendom, but winter's memory lingers in these early hours. You reach for the woolen undertunic draped over the bedside chest, pulling the rough fabric over your head. The wool catches slightly on the hardened skin of your hands. Hands that have gripped sword and lance through countless practices, tournaments, and the occasional true combat. The chamber holds little else, a wooden chest containing your few worldly possessions, a small table bearing a basin of water, a silver candlestick beside your personal psalter, and a simple wooden crucifix hanging above the bed. These modest comforts are luxury enough for a knight in service to Baron Edmund of Westmere. You dip your hands into the basin, the shock of cold water banishing the last traces of sleep from your mind. Cupping the water, you splash your face, feeling each icy droplet trace paths down your weather-worn skin. You run wet fingers through your hair, smoothing it back from your brow where a thin scar, a reminder of your first tournament, marks you as a man who has faced the test of steel. Your fingers find the leather thong around your neck, drawing forth the small silver cross given to you by your mother when you departed for your squireship at the age of 7. The metal has warmed against your skin through the night, a constant reminder of faith and family honor. You press it briefly to your lips before tucking it back beneath your tunic. With practiced efficiency, you dress for the morning prayers. Linen brays and chaucers cover your legs, secured with leather garters at the knee. Over your woolen undertunic goes the padded gambeson, its quilted fabric bearing the faint stains of sweat from yesterday's training. Your squire, young Thomas, would normally assist you, but for morning prayers you dress yourself, a moment of private preparation before facing God and your duties. You forgo the weight of full armor. That will come later when the day's duties demand it. For now, you buckle your sword belt around your waist. The familiar weight of your sword, your father's sword, reborn in your service, settles against your hip. The pommel bears your family crest, modest but proud, a falcon above, crossed spears. From your window, you can see the first true light touching the eastern wall of the castle bailey. The roosters have begun their urgent announcements, and somewhere below, you hear the kitchen servants stirring to life, preparing bread for the day's first meal. The blacksmith's apprentice crosses the yard, a slim silhouette carrying kindling, to awaken the forge. You make your way down the winding stone staircase, your hand brushing against the cool wall for balance. The steps are worn at their centers, countless feet having traveled this same path over generations. At the bottom, you pass the small alcove where Thomas sleeps on a simple pallet. The boy stirs, but doesn't wake. You've instructed him to join, you at prime, after your private devotions. The great hall is silent and dim as you cross it, the high table at the far end barely visible in the grey light filtering through narrow windows. The hounds curled before the banked central hearth lift, their heads as you pass, recognizing your scent and step, then settling back to their dreams. The air holds the lingering aromas of last night's meal, roasted meat, bread, and the sharp tang of spilled ale soaking into the fresh rushes strewn across the floor. Outside, the bailey is beginning to stir. Two guardsmen nod respectfully as you pass, their night watch nearly complete. "God give you good morning, Sir Geoffrey," one murmurs, stifling a yawn. You return the greeting with a slight nod, your mind already turning toward your devotions. The chapel stands apart from the main keep, a stone sanctuary dedicated to St. Michael the Archangel, patron of knights and warriors. Its small bell will ring soon, calling the castle residents to prime. But for now, the space is yours alone, a knight's privilege and duty. You push open the heavy wooden door, its iron hinges protesting softly. Inside, the air is different. Still, cool, but touched with the sweet scent of incense and beeswax candles. A single lamp burns perpetually before the altar, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Father Gregory, the castle's chaplain, has already prepared for the day's first service, the altar cloth smooth and white in the dim light. You make your way to the front, where the knight's prayer bench awaits. The wood is smooth from years of yews, worn by the knees of warriors seeking God's guidance before facing each day's challenges. You kneel, feeling the familiar pressure against your legs, and bow your head. The silence envelops you completely, broken only by the soft sound of your breathing and the occasional call of a bird outside. This moment, this quiet communion before the demands of the day press upon you, has been the foundation of your nightly discipline since you took your vows. You remember the night of your vigil before knighthood, kneeling through darkness until dawn, your armor laid before the altar, your soul laid bare before God. Your lips form the familiar words of the night's prayer. Heavenly Father, strengthen my arm that I might defend the weak, sharpen my eye that I might discern the truth, temper my spirit that I might act with justice, guard my heart that I might serve with mercy, and should this day be my last in your earthly realm, receive me with the honor of a faithful servant. The words settle into the stone around you, joining the countless prayers whispered here by knights before you. Some of those men lie buried in the small cemetery beyond the chapel walls, their names carved in weathered stone, their deeds recorded in the memory of songs and tales. You open your psalter, the parchment pages soft and yellowed at the edges from daily handling. The Latin words flow through your mind as you recite the morning psalms, your voice barely above a whisper in the sacred space. Though you are no scholar, these words have become part of you through years of repetition, their meanings etched into your understanding as surely as sword practice has trained your arm. Time passes without measure in this peaceful solitude. Eventually, you become aware of soft footfalls behind you. Father Gregory has arrived to prepare for the morning service. You finish your devotions and rise, your knees protesting slightly from the hard stone floor. "God's blessings, Sir Geoffrey," the priest says quietly, his aged hands arranging the sacred vessels for Mass. "And upon you, Father," you reply, your voice sounding unusually loud after the long silence. The Baron rides to the Northern Holdings today. It is both question and statement. Little occurs in the castle without the priest's knowledge. "Yes, Father. We depart after breaking our fast." The old man nods, his eyes thoughtful. "I shall pray for fair weather and peaceful encounters." You bow slightly and step back as other members of the household begin to file in for prime. Servants, men-at-arms, the castle steward, and finally, your Squire Thomas, his young face still creased with sleep, despite his obvious efforts to appear alert and dignified. The boy takes his place beside you, standing straight as you've taught him. At 13, he has served you for 2 years now, learning the ways of knighthood as you once learned from Sir Roland. You feel a surge of quiet pride at the boy's progress. His swordplay is improving, and yesterday he managed to saddle your warhorse without assistance. No small feat given the animal's size and temperament. As Father Gregory begins the service, your mind settles into the familiar rhythm of the liturgy, the Latin phrases, the responses, the moments of kneeling and standing. This structure forms the backbone of your days, just as surely as sword practice and council meetings. A knight serves God first, his lord second, and all else follows from these twin loyalties. The service concludes, and the household disperses to their various duties. Thomas follows at your heels as you make your way to the great hall, where the morning meal awaits. The Baron will be present, along with his immediate family and knights, before the day's journey begins. "Shall I prepare your armor after we eat?" "Sir Geoffrey," Thomas asks, lengthening his stride to keep pace with you. "Yes, but not the full plate. Chainmail and helm will suffice for today's journey. We're escorting, not fighting." You glance down at the boy, noting the disappointment that flickers across his face. Like all squires, Thomas dreams of battle and glory. Like all knights who have seen true combat, you pray he will encounter little of either. "Polish my breastplate nonetheless," you add. "We'll use it for practice later this week." This brightens the boy's expression. He knows that polishing means he'll soon be allowed to try it on, part of his gradual introduction to the weight and restriction of full armor. The Great Hall has transformed in the short time since you passed through earlier. Now bright with morning light streaming through the high windows, the space buzzes with conversation and activity. Servants move efficiently between the kitchen and tables, carrying trays laden with bread fresh from the ovens, bowls of porridge, sweetened with honey, and pitchers of small beer, the light, low-alcohol brew that safely quenches thirst when water cannot be trusted. You take your place at one of the side tables with the other household knights. Sir William, grizzled and 20 years your senior, nods a greeting. Beside him sits Sir Gareth, barely a year past his own dubbing ceremony, still wearing his new status with visible pride. Thomas takes his position behind your chair, ready to serve you as protocol demands, though you often share your food with him when the Baron isn't looking. "The northern road will be mud after yesterday's rain," Sir William remarks, tearing a chunk from the bread before him. "We'd best allow extra time." You nod in agreement. The stream at Wickham Cross may be high as well. The conversation turns to practical matters, the condition of bridges, the number of men-at-arms accompanying your party, whether the Baron's daughter can truly manage the journey without complaint. Lady Eleanor, at 15, is travelling to meet her future husband's family for the first time, and her temperament has been unpredictable of late. Baron Edmund enters the hall, and all rise until he takes his seat at the high table. His lady wife follows, along with their daughter Eleanor and young son Richard. The Baron's face is stern this morning. This journey matters greatly to the family's fortunes, as the marriage alliance with the Northern Lord will secure their borders and expand their influence. You eat efficiently, savouring the simple flavours: warm bread with fresh butter, porridge that fills the stomach, a slice of cold meat from yesterday's roast. Your body has long been trained to take nourishment when offered, never knowing when the next proper meal might come. Campaigns and battles have taught you that hunger can undermine even the strongest arm. As the meal concludes, the Baron stands. "We ride within the hour," he announces, his voice carrying across the hall. "Sir Geoffrey, Sir William, you'll ride vanguard with me. Sir Gareth and Sir Roland will escort my lady wife and daughter." You bow your acknowledgement of the order. The assignment is a mark of trust. The Baron wants his most experienced knights at the fore, where their eyes can best assess any danger. The journey is expected to be peaceful, but a wise lord takes no chances with his family's safety. Thomas is already moving toward the door, eager to begin preparing your equipment. You follow at a measured pace, nodding to fellow knights as you pass. Outside, the castle bailey has fully awakened to the day. Grooms lead horses from the stables for inspection. Men-at-arms check leather straps and buckles on their equipment. Servants hurry about with final provisions for the journey. In your chamber, Thomas has laid out your mail haubergeon, lighter than full armour, but still substantial protection. The boy's fingers work nimbly at the leather straps of your padded arming doublet, which will prevent the mail from chafing against your body during the long ride. The blue surcoat, Thomas, you instruct, with the family arms. Today is formal business, and you will ride displaying your lineage and allegiance. The weight of the mail settles across your shoulders as Thomas helps lower it over your head. The familiar sensation, confining yet reassuring, reminds you of your first time donning such armour as a young squire. How enormous it had seemed then, how impossibly heavy. Now your body accepts it as naturally as a second skin. Layer by layer, your transformation continues. Leather gauntlets to protect your hands while allowing the dexterity needed for controlling your mount. Your sword belt, checked carefully by Thomas for any sign of wear that might fail at a crucial moment. Your dagger, tucked into its sheath at your waist. A light helm, suitable for travel rather than combat, but offering protection should the unexpected occur. Finally, the blue surcoat goes over all, the embroidered falcon and spears of your family displayed proudly on chest and back. Thomas steps back, assessing his work with a critical eye, then nods with satisfaction. "Will I ride with you today, Sir Geoffrey?" The question comes tentatively. Thomas knows that on some journeys, squires remain behind. "Yes," you reply, checking the fit of your gauntlets. A squire learns best by observing. Have Cedric ready your mount. Relief and excitement flash across the boy's face before he remembers his dignity and composes his features. "At once, sir." He hurries from the chamber, nearly colliding with Sir William in the doorway. The older knight chuckles, eager as a hound pup, that one. "As we all were once," you reply with a slight smile. William's expression grows more serious. The Baron received a messenger at dawn. Rumours of outlaws near Wickham Wood. You frown slightly. Credible? Uncertain, but will ride alert. The old knight taps the hilt of his sword meaningfully. Better to be overprepared than surprised. You nod your agreement and follow him down to the bailey. Your warhorse, Aldous, stands ready, the groom holding his reins with respectful caution. The black destrier is a fearsome creature, 17 hands high, broad-chested, with the strength to carry a fully armored knight through the chaos of battle. For today's journey, he bears only light armor on chest and head, with your shield secured to the saddle. You approach the animal carefully, speaking in low tones as you stroke his neck. Aldous recognizes you, his initial tension easing as you run your gauntleted hand along his flank. The relationship between knight and warhorse is intimate and vital. Your lives depend upon each other in the crucible of combat. Mounting requires a fluid movement that you've perfected over years. Even in mail, you swing yourself up with practiced ease, settling into the high-back saddle. Thomas rides up on his smaller mount, pride evident in his straight-backed posture. You nod approval at his seat. The boy has been working diligently on his horsemanship. The Baron's party assembles in the courtyard, nearly 30 souls in total, including knights, men-at-arms, servants, and the family members. The baggage train is modest, as you'll be staying in manors and monasteries along the route, but still requires several pack horses. Lady Eleanor sits side saddle on a gentle palfrey, her expression a careful mask of noble composure despite the apprehension that must lie beneath. Her future husband, Lord Percival's son, is known to be honourable but stern, a good match politically, though whether it will bring her happiness remains in God's hands. Baron Edmund raises his hand, and the castle gates swing wide. The morning sun has risen fully now, burning away the mist that clung to the surrounding fields. The countryside spreads before you, rolling hills dotted with the fresh green of spring, peasants already at work in the distant fields, the spire of the village church rising beyond the castle walls. You adjust your position in the saddle, settling in for the journey ahead. The weight of mail, the rhythm of hoofbeats, the responsibility of vigilance, these are the constants of a knight's life. As the procession moves forward, you scan the horizon with practiced eyes, one hand resting lightly on your sword hilt. The day has truly begun, not with the clash of weapons or the splendor of court, but with this quiet duty, this watchful service that forms the foundation of chivalry far more than any glorious battle. In this moment of peaceful alertness, riding forth with purpose under the widening sky, you embody the true meaning of knighthood. The road stretches ahead, winding through the spring-touched landscape. Peasants working the fields pause to bow as your procession passes, their faces showing a mixture of respect and curiosity. Children run alongside for short distances, marveling at the horses and armor before their mothers call them back to their chores. A knight's presence is both ordinary and extraordinary in their world, a reminder of the order that protects their simple lives. You maintain a careful distance ahead of the main party, your eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Sir William rides to your right, his experienced gaze missing nothing. Between you, 20 years of campaigning have honed your senses to detect the slightest anomaly in the peaceful countryside. The weight of responsibility sits comfortably on your shoulders. This vigilance is as much a part of you as breathing. The morning advances as you ride, the sun climbing higher in the spring sky. Your thoughts drift occasionally to the coming tournament at midsummer, where you'll represent your baron against knights from neighbouring lands. Your last tournament brought victory and a modest purse, enough to commission a new saddle and contribute to the dowry for your sister's youngest daughter. Thomas rides slightly behind you, observing your posture and the way you handle your mount. The boy's own seat has improved markedly in recent months. You make a mental note to begin his lance training in earnest upon your return. He shows promise, a steady hand and good eye that may one day make him a formidable opponent in the lists. The road narrows as it enters a stretch of woodland. You signal for greater alertness, and the men-at-arms tighten their formation around the Baron's family. The trees create shifting patterns of light and shadow across the path, and the sounds change. Birdsong echoes differently here, and the hoofbeats are muffled by the soft layer of pine needles covering portions of the road. This is the stretch where vigilance matters most. Woodlands have concealed ambushes since time immemorial, a fact known to every soldier who has ever marched. You rest your hand more firmly on your sword hilt, your eyes probing the green shadows between the trunks. Sir William does the same, his body language communicating readiness without alarm. A deer bounds suddenly across the path ahead, startling several horses. You maintain control of Aldous with practiced ease, though you feel his muscles tense beneath you, ready for whatever command might follow. The procession continues without incident, emerging eventually into open countryside once more. By midday, the sun beats down with unexpected warmth for the season. The Baron calls for a brief rest beside a small stream where horses can drink and the travellers can stretch their legs. Servants quickly establish a simple canopy for Lady Eleanor and her mother, providing shade and privacy. You remain mounted longer than the others, surveying the surrounding landscape from the advantage of height. Only when Sir Roland signals his readiness to take the watch do you dismount, removing your helm and running a hand through your sweat-dampened hair. Thomas approaches with a water skin. "Drink, sir. The day grows warm." You accept with a nod of thanks, the cool water a welcome relief. While knights train to endure discomfort, there is no virtue in unnecessary suffering. A wise warrior conserves his strength and maintains his body with the same care he gives his weapons and armor. The Baron summons his knights to confer over a rough map drawn on parchment. "We'll reach the abbey by evenfall if we maintain our pace," he says, tracing the route with his finger. "Father Ambrose will provide hospitality for the night." "The road improves beyond the next village," Sir William adds. "We can make better time there." You listen attentively, offering observations about the terrain ahead, based on your last journey this way. The planning is methodical, considering distance, potential hazards, and the comfort of the ladies. In this, as in battle planning, details matter. A lesson impressed upon you during your earliest training. The rest period ends, and the procession reforms. You help Thomas check the girths on both your horses before remounting. Aldous seems eager to move again, his powerful muscles quivering slightly beneath you. The great destrier was bred for action, not leisure, a warrior's soul in an animal's body. The afternoon brings different challenges than the morning. The sun's heat intensifies, making the mail uncomfortably warm against your body despite the padded garment beneath. Dust rises from the road, coating armor and clothing alike. Lady Eleanor looks increasingly fatigued, though she makes no complaint. Another kind of endurance being tested on this journey. Your vigilance never wavers despite the discomfort. Each rise in the road presents a new vista to assess. Each copse of trees a potential hiding place to evaluate. This constant awareness is the unsung aspect of a knight's duty, not the glorified moments of combat celebrated in minstrels' tales, but the long hours of watchful protection that prevent such conflicts from occurring. When the village of Wickham appears in the distance, its church spire rising above clustered thatch roofs, a palpable sense of relief passes through the company. The Baron calls you to his side as you approach. "We'll stop briefly for water and to deliver these," he says, indicating a small leather pouch attached to his saddle. Letters for the village reeve concerning the summer taxes. Yes, my lord. Take Sir Gareth and make a circuit of the village before we enter. Those rumours of outlaws may be nothing, but prudence costs little. You bow slightly in the saddle and motion to the young knight, who follows eagerly as you break away from the main party. Circling the small settlement takes little time. Its boundaries are marked by simple wooden fences and cultivated fields. Nothing appears amiss. Villagers working in gardens glance up at your passing with the customary deference. Children pause in their play, and chickens scatter from your horse's path. Sir Gareth's disappointment at finding nothing of concern is almost palpable. The messenger's report must have been mistaken, he says, as you rejoin the main road. Or the danger has passed, or it awaits elsewhere. You offer these possibilities without emphasis. A knight finds enough real battles without wishing for more. The young man absorbs this wisdom with a thoughtful nod, though whether it truly penetrates his youthful eagerness remains to be seen. You remember your own impatience at his age, the burning desire to prove yourself through action rather than restraint. Time and experience have taught you the value of the battles not fought. The village welcomes Baron Edmund with appropriate ceremony. The reeve, a stout man with a nervous manner, presents bread and salt in the ancient gesture of hospitality. Villagers gather at a respectful distance, observing the noble visitors with curious eyes. For them, this brief visit will provide conversation for weeks to come. While the Baron conducts his business with the reeve, you oversee the watering of horses and the brief rest period. Thomas proves his worth yet again, efficiently managing tasks that would normally require several squires. The boy has a natural talent for organization that will serve him well in years to come. The journey resumes with refreshed horses and spirits. The afternoon wears on, the sun beginning its gradual descent toward the western hills. The abbey will be a welcome sight by day's end, a place of security and comfort after the day's vigilance on the road. As you ride, your thoughts turn occasionally to matters beyond this immediate duty. Your younger brother manages the small family estate in your absence, his letters reporting good harvests and few troubles. Your sister's children grow tall and strong, the eldest showing promise with the bow. These connections to family and land remain important, anchoring your service to something beyond oaths and obligations. The road crests a rise, and suddenly the abbey comes into view in the distance. Stone buildings arranged around a central church, surrounded by well-tended fields where lay brothers work under the fading light. The sight brings palpable relief to the company, particularly the ladies, for whom the journey has been most taxing. Baron Edmund sends a man-at-arms ahead to announce your arrival. Protocol and courtesy must be observed, even when hospitality is expected. The monastery will need time to prepare for noble guests, arranging appropriate accommodations separated from the monks' quarters. The final approach to the abbey gates feels different from the long hours on the road. The vigilance remains, but the tension eases slightly. Holy ground offers protection beyond that of mere walls and guards, an ancient sanctuary respected by all but the most godless outlaws. Monks in simple robes emerge to greet your party as you reach the outer gate. The abbot himself stands at their center, his hands folded within the wide sleeves of his habit. "Welcome in God's name, Baron Edmund," he intones, his voice carrying the measured cadence of one accustomed to liturgical chanting. The formal exchanges between lord and abbot follow patterns established over centuries. Offers of hospitality met with expressions of gratitude, inquiries after health and journey, brief mentions of matters that will be discussed more fully after proper refreshment. You observe these courtesies from your mounted position, still alert, despite the safety of these walls. Eventually, the company moves into the abbey grounds, where grooms and lay brothers come forward to tend to the horses. You swing down from your saddle with practiced ease despite the day's fatigue setting into your muscles. Thomas takes Aldous' reins, speaking softly to the great destrier. See that he's properly cooled and watered, you instruct. Check his left foreleg. He favoured it slightly on the last stretch. Yes, Sir Geoffrey. The boy's earnest attention to your instructions reflects his growing understanding that a knight's effectiveness depends as much on the care of his mount as on his own skill with weapons. Within the Abbey's guest quarters, you finally remove your mail with Thomas's assistance. The sudden lightness feels strange after a day bearing its weight. Your padded undergarment is sweat-soaked, and you look forward to changing into fresh clothing before the evening meal. The chamber allocated to you is simple but comfortable. A straw mattress on a wooden frame, a basin of clean water, a small table bearing a candle, and a window overlooking the inner courtyard. Thomas will sleep on a pallet near the door, as befits a squire's position. You wash thoroughly, removing the dust of the road from face and hands. Clean linen and a fresh tunic improve both comfort and appearance. A knight represents his lord even in these details, appearance and conduct reflecting honour upon both himself and his master. Before joining the others for the evening meal, you take a moment of quiet reflection. The day has passed without incident, a blessing in itself. Tomorrow will bring new miles, new vigilance, and eventually the meeting between Lady Eleanor and her future husband's family. Your duty remains constant through it all. To protect, to serve, to embody the ideals of knighthood in every action. As you make your way to the refectory where the evening meal awaits, you pass the Abbey church. The sound of monks chanting Vespers drifts through its open doors, a reminder of the divine order that gives meaning to earthly service. You pause briefly, making the sign of the cross before continuing on your way. This day, with its quiet duty, its watchful care, its small decisions and constant awareness, represents the true heart of knightly service, not the clash of tournaments or the fury of battle that minstrels celebrate, but the steadfast protection that allows others to live in peace. In this, you find a deeper satisfaction than any glory could provide. The Baron nods approval as you enter the refectory, a silent acknowledgement of duty well performed. Thomas catches your eye from his place among the other servants, his young face showing fatigue but also pride in his part of the day's journey. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. But for now, there is simple food, the company of fellow knights, and the quiet satisfaction of a day's duty fulfilled. This is the rhythm of your life, the life you chose when you knelt before the altar and rose as Sir Geoffrey, sworn to serve God, Lord, and the innocent with unwavering devotion. As evening deepens into night, the Abbey falls silent, save for the footsteps of monks moving to prayer. You check on Aldous one last time before seeking your bed, finding the destrier contentedly settled in the stable. Thomas has tended him well, as you expected. In your simple chamber, you kneel for evening prayers, thanking God for safe passage and asking protection for the journey ahead. The day's vigilance eases into night's surrender, your night's body yielding gradually to well-earned rest. Tomorrow will dawn soon enough, with new miles to travel and duties to fulfill. Your last conscious thought before sleep claims you is not of glory or conquest, but of the peaceful countryside you helped keep safe this day. In that simple guardianship lies the true meaning of the vows you took, the quiet honor of the sword that remains sheathed, because your watchful presence made its use unnecessary. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the training yard, where dust rises from beneath the rhythmic dance of practice swords. A different kind of vigilance emerges here, the teaching of ancient arts, the passing of knowledge from knight to squire in the eternal cycle of chivalric tradition. You stand at the center of the training yard, dust rising around your boots with each careful step. The weight of the blunted practice sword in your hand feels almost negligible after years of wielding true steel in battle. Around you, the sounds of the castle form a familiar backdrop. The rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the calls of merchants in the bailey, the distant chatter from the kitchens where tonight's feast is being prepared. But your focus remains on the nervous youth before you, his practice sword gripped too tightly, his stance too rigid despite weeks of instruction. "You're strangling the hilt, Thomas," you say, your voice calm but firm. The sword is an extension of your arm, not a separate thing to be controlled. The boy, your squire for nearly 3 years now, nods earnestly, his brow furrowed in concentration as he adjusts his grip. At 16, he shows promise. His frame has filled out considerably since he first came into your service, gangly limbs developing the muscle needed to one day bear armor with ease. More importantly, he possesses the right temperament, diligent, respectful, with a mind that questions intelligently rather than challenging for its own sake. Again, you command, raising your practice blade to the guard position. "Remember what I taught you about reading the shoulders, not the eyes." Thomas advances with improved form, his movements more fluid than before. You parry his first strike easily, deliberately leaving an opening to test whether he recognizes it. The boy hesitates for just a moment, enough time in real combat for death to find him, then adjusts his attack to exploit the opportunity you've presented. "Better," you acknowledge as your blades meet. But in battle, hesitation is the mother of failure. He completes the maxim you've drilled into him countless times. His next attack comes without pause, showing growing confidence. You continue the training session, gradually increasing the complexity of your movements, testing not just his arm, but his mind. Teaching Thomas has become one of your deeper satisfactions. Watching knowledge take root and skill develop under your guidance. You remember your own training under Sir Roland's stern tutelage, how the older knights seemed to possess impossible standards that somehow, year by year, you grew to meet. The summer heat intensifies as morning transitions to afternoon. Sweat darkens your padded gambeson and trickles down your back. Thomas's face is flushed with exertion, but his determination never wavers. Other knights and squires occupy different areas of the training yard. Sir William drilling 2 newer, squires in shield techniques, Sir Gareth practicing mounted lance work on the quintain, sergeants putting men-at-arms through formations with spear and bow. This daily ritual, the honing of martial skills through constant practice, forms the backbone of a knight's physical prowess. The tournament circuit brings glory and recognition, battle tests, courage and resilience. But it is here in these dusty yards that warriors are truly forged, day by patient day. After an hour of sword work, you signal a pause. Thomas steps back, breathing heavily but standing straight, awaiting your assessment. Your parries have improved, you tell him honestly. but you still telegraph your high attacks. A veteran opponent would read your intent before you move. How do I prevent it? Sir Geoffrey? The question comes without defensiveness, genuine curiosity from a student eager to improve. Observe. You demonstrate a series of attacks, showing how subtle misdirection can mask true intent. The body must lie without words. Make your shoulder suggest a low strike when you intend to go high. Practice deception in your movements until it becomes as natural as breathing. You call over a water skin, and Thomas drinks gratefully before passing it to you. The cool water eases your parched throat, washing away the taste of dust. Around you, the training yard continues its symphony of martial activity. The rhythmic thwack of arrows finding their targets, the hollow impact of practice blades against wooden shields, the occasional shout of instruction or encouragement. Will, move to mounted work after midday prayers, you inform Thomas. Have Aldous and your bay ready. Today we'll practice control at the gallop. The boy's eyes light with anticipation despite his fatigue. Mounted combat represents the pinnacle of knightly skill, and Thomas has shown particular aptitude for horsemanship. You remember your own excitement at his age, when first learning to manage a destrier while wielding weapons, the intoxicating combination of power and precision that transforms a mounted knight into something approaching the centaurs of ancient legend. As Thomas departs to refresh himself before prayers, you remain in the yard, observing the other training sessions with a critical eye. Sir William catches your gaze and nods toward his charges. Edric shows promise with the shield, the older knight comments as you approach. Strong arm, good instincts. You watch the squire in question, a stocky youth of perhaps 15, his movements economical and precise as he blocks a series of attacks. His footwork needs attention, you observe. He plants too firmly. William nods agreement. A common fault in the stronger boys. They trust muscle over movement. This exchange, this careful evaluation of developing skills, represents another aspect of knightly duty often overlooked in minstrels' tales. The future of chivalric tradition depends on such attentive instruction, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Even as your body begins to feel the first whispers of age in stiffening joints and slower recovery from exertion, your mind accumulates wisdom that must not die with you. The chapel bell rings the call to midday prayers and activity in the training. Yard pauses. Knights and squires alike set aside their weapons, washing dust from hands and faces before making their way to the castle's small chapel. This rhythm, practice interrupted by prayer, embodies the dual nature of knighthood, martial prowess guided by spiritual devotion. You join the procession moving toward the chapel, removing your padded cap and running fingers through sweat-dampened hair. The transition from training to devotion comes easily after years of practice, your mind shifting from tactical considerations to contemplation of higher truths. Inside the chapel, cool stone walls offer welcome relief from the summer heat. The space is modest compared to great cathedrals you visited, but its simplicity holds its own beauty. Clean lines of Norman arches, slender windows casting patterns of colored light across the stone floor, a single carved crucifix above, the altar depicting Christ in majesty rather than suffering. Knights and men-at-arms fill the wooden benches, their usually loud voices hushed in this sacred space. Thomas sits with the other squires, his head already bowed in prayer. Father Gregory enters in his simple vestments, nodding acknowledgement to Baron Edmund, who occupies the front bench with his family. The familiar Latin prayers wash over you, their cadence as rhythmic and practiced as sword forms. Your lips form the responses automatically while your mind settles into contemplative stillness. This spiritual discipline parallels martial training. Both require regular practice, focused attention, and surrender of self to something greater. Father Gregory's brief homily centers on the virtue of perseverance, drawing parallels between spiritual and worldly struggles. As the athlete trains his body daily without guarantee of victory, he intones, so must the soul be disciplined in virtue, without promise of immediate reward. The message resonates with your own experience, the long years of training, the patience required to develop true mastery, the faith that effort will eventually bear fruit even when progress seems imperceptible. After the final blessing, knights file out of the chapel, conversation resuming as they cross the threshold back into the secular world. You pause briefly before the side altar dedicated to Saint Michael, patron of warriors, offering a private prayer for guidance in your continuing duty to train Thomas well. The boy has been entrusted to you by his father, a minor lord who hopes his son will rise further than family circumstances might otherwise allow. This responsibility weighs differently than battlefield command, but no less heavily. Outside, the sun has reached its zenith, beating down mercilessly on the castle stones. The afternoon promises even greater heat, making the planned mounted exercises more challenging. You make your way to the stables where Thomas is already preparing your horses, his movements efficient despite the oppressive temperature. Aldous acknowledges your approach with a soft nickering. The great black destrier has been your companion through countless tournaments and several campaigns. Unlike ordinary riding horses, war horses require specialized training nearly as rigorous as their riders, learning to remain calm amidst chaos, to respond instantly to subtle commands, to move in precise coordination with a knight's combat needs. The bond between you and Aldous transcends simple mastery. It is a partnership forged through shared danger and mutual trust. You inspect the destrier's tack carefully, checking leather straps for signs of wear and metal fittings for security. Even in practice, mistakes in equipment can lead to serious injury. Thomas watches your inspection, understanding that this attention to detail represents another lesson. One day his own life might depend on such thoroughness. We'll work in the outer field today, you tell him, satisfied with Aldous's preparation. More space for galloping sequences. The boy nods, leading his own mount, a sturdy bay gelding chosen for its even temperament and trainability. The animal lacks Aldous's size and power, but suits a squire's needs perfectly, responsive enough for skill development, but not so spirited as to overwhelm a still-developing rider. You mount with practiced ease, feeling Aldous's powerful muscles shift beneath you as he adjusts to your weight. The familiar sensation grounds you, this connection between knight and horse that forms the foundation of mounted combat. Thomas follows suit, his mounting form much improved since his early days when he needed a mounting block to reach the saddle. The outer training field lies beyond the castle walls, a broad expanse of packed earth bordered by split-rail fencing. Several quintaines, rotating practice targets used for lance work, stand at one end, while hay bale targets for mounted archery occupy another section. The field is otherwise empty today, most knights preferring to avoid the afternoon heat. If duties allow, you begin with basic maneuvers, walking the horses in precise patterns to warm their muscles and establish the rhythm of rider-mount communication. Then you progress to trotting figures, emphasizing the subtle leg and weight cues that direct a warhorse without requiring reins to be shifted from weapon hands. Your bay responds well to leg pressure, you observe as Thomas executes a clean figure 8. Remember that in true combat, your hands will be occupied with sword and shield. The horse must understand your intent through seat and knees alone. Yes, Sir Geoffrey. The boy adjusts his position slightly, demonstrating improved awareness of how his body communicates with the animal beneath him. As the exercises progress to canter and finally full gallop, you watch Thomas's development with growing satisfaction. The awkward child who first came into your service is disappearing, replaced by a young man who shows genuine aptitude for knighthood. His seat remains secure even at speed, his hands steady, his attention fully present in each moment of the training. You demonstrate more advanced techniques, the tight turn that can position an opponent suddenly on your sword side, the controlled deceleration that allows precise weapon deployment without losing forward momentum. Thomas observes intently before attempting each maneuver, his concentration absolute, despite sweat dripping from his brow in the relentless heat. Now we add complexity, you announce after an hour of pure horsemanship. Riding patterns while performing sword movements. You hand Thomas a light practice sword, similar in weight to a real weapon, but balanced differently to prevent training injuries. Begin with the simple cuts. First walking, then trotting. Focus on keeping your seat secure while your upper body works independently. This division of attention, lower body communicating with the horse while upper body manages weapons, represents one of the most challenging aspects of mounted combat. You remember your own struggles mastering this skill, the frustration of either losing control of your mount or fumbling weapon techniques that came easily on foot. Thomas begins tentatively, his sword movements becoming hesitant when combined with riding. This is expected. The natural learning progression requires patience from both teacher and student. You provide calm correction when needed, demonstration when words prove insufficient, and occasional praise when improvement appears. Better, you acknowledge after his third attempt at a trotting circuit with diagonal cuts. Your body is learning to operate as two separate systems. With enough practice, this division becomes unconscious. The afternoon wears on, the training proceeding methodically through increasingly complex combinations. Both horses and humans grow fatigued in the heat, but you push the session to a natural conclusion rather than ending early. Endurance matters. In tournament or battle, combat rarely occurs in ideal conditions or when fighters are fresh. Finally, you signal the end of practice. Thomas's relief is evident, though he tries to conceal it, straightening his tired shoulders and patting his mount's sweaty neck with appreciation for the animal's efforts. Cool the horses thoroughly, you instruct, as you dismount back at the stables. Walk them until their breathing settles, then water sparingly at first. Check for any signs of lameness or saddle sores. Yes, Sir Geoffrey. The boy's voice reveals his fatigue, but his movements remain disciplined as he begins the important post-exercise care routines you've taught him. You tend to Aldous personally, a habit maintained despite having a squire to perform such duties. The ritual of care, removing tack, checking the animal's condition, brushing sweaty hide until it gleams, provides a meditative transition between the intensity of training and the evening's more social obligations. Your hands work automatically, while your mind reflects on the day's progress, both Thomas's and your own. The castle bell tolls the hour of vespers as you complete Aldous' care. The evening meal will follow soon after prayers, and Baron Edmund expects his knights to attend tonight. Visiting nobles from a neighbouring county have arrived to discuss boundary disputes, making a formal showing of the Baron's military strength politically expedient. You've time to bathe before the evening meal, you tell Thomas, noting his dust-covered appearance. Use the bathhouse, cold water only after such exertion. The boy nods gratefully. Will you require formal attendance tonight, sir? Yes. Where? The blue tunic with my colours. As your squire, Thomas's appearance at formal functions reflects upon your own standing. The blue tunic, embroidered with your family crest, marks him as part of your household, while distinguishing him from common servants. In your own chamber, you shed the sweat-soaked training clothes with relief. A servant has left a basin of clean water, and you wash thoroughly, removing the day's grime from face and body. The cool water soothes muscles warmed by exertion, though certain old injuries, a shoulder damaged in tournament 5 years past, a knee twisted during a campaign against Welsh raiders, remind you of their presence with dull aches. You dress with care for the evening's obligations, choosing garments that reflect your status without excessive ostentation. Unlike some knights, who spend fortunes on elaborate clothing, you prefer quality materials in simpler styles. Your sword belt and the silver chain, denoting knighthood, provide sufficient indicators of rank without need for peacock displays that might suggest insecurity about your position. Before descending to the Great Hall, you pause at the small writing desk in the corner of your chamber. A half-completed letter to your sister rests there, alongside accounts from your modest family holdings. The administrative aspects of knighthood receive little attention in romantic tales, but managing resources, ensuring rents are collected fairly, that dependent households have sufficient provisions, that legal obligations are met, occupies a significant portion of a knight's peaceful hours. You make a brief note regarding Thomas's progress to include in your next letter home. Your sister has expressed interest in the boy as a potential match for her second daughter when both reach appropriate age. The alliance would benefit both families, assuming Thomas continues his development toward full knighthood. Such arrangements, the careful weaving of family connections through marriage, represent another aspect of a knight's responsibilities to his lineage. The great hall buzzes with conversation when you arrive. Baron Edmund sits at the high table with his distinguished guests, while knights and other members of the household occupy the lower tables according to rank and favour. Thomas stands with other squires along the wall, ready to serve as needed, his freshly washed face and neat appearance a credit to your training. You take your assigned place beside Sir William, nodding greetings to fellow knights. The old warrior raises his cup in silent salute. "Your squire handled Aldous well this morning," he comments. "No small achievement with that devil horse of yours." "Thomas has good hands," you acknowledge, accepting a cup of wine from a passing server. "And Aldous tolerates him better than most. The destrier grows old with his master," William says with a wry smile. "Perhaps he's mellowing like you." You return the smile, recognizing the good-natured provocation for what it is. At 37 years, you stand at the midpoint of a knight's typical career, experienced enough to have earned respect, young enough still to command your full physical powers. William, nearly 20 years your senior, has gradually transitioned from active combat roles to training and advisory positions, a natural evolution you'll face yourself in time. Conversation during the meal ranges widely: recent tournaments and their outcomes, the condition of roads for upcoming travel, speculation about the king's health and its implications for regional politics. You contribute occasionally, but listen more, gathering information that might prove useful. A knight's value to his lord extends beyond martial skill to include political awareness and sound counsel when requested. After the main courses have been cleared, Baron Edmund rises to offer formal toasts to his guests. The ritual exchange of courtesies follows established patterns, each noble house acknowledged according to its status, ancient alliances reaffirmed through carefully chosen words. You observe the diplomatic dance with interest, noting how the Baron navigates competing interests with practiced skill. Musicians begin playing as servants bring the final sweet courses and more wine. The atmosphere relaxes somewhat, though the undercurrents of political maneuvering remain. You catch Thomas stifling a yawn as he stands at attention against the wall, the day's exertions taking their toll despite his best efforts to maintain proper composure. You excuse yourself from the table at an appropriate moment, approaching Thomas with a small nod. "You're dismissed for the evening," you tell him quietly. "Rest well. Tomorrow we begin work with shield and mace." Relief and gratitude flash across the boy's features before he composes them into proper deference. "Thank you, Sir Geoffrey. Good evening." Rather than returning to the table, you make your way out to one of the castle's walkways, seeking a moment of quiet before retiring. The summer evening has cooled considerably, a gentle breeze carrying the scents of the surrounding countryside, ripening grain from distant fields, wildflowers from the meadows beyond the walls, the earthy smell of the river that flows past the castle's eastern approach. You look out over the darkening landscape, your mind settling into contemplative stillness after the day's activities. Stars appear overhead, the same stars that guided your steps during night marches on campaign, that watched over countless generations of nights before you, that will shine on those who come after your own time has passed. This moment, this quiet reflection between duty fulfilled and rest earned, contains its own particular satisfaction. Not the fierce joy of victory, nor the simple pleasure of physical prowess, but the deeper contentment of purpose, recognized and honored through daily discipline. A knight's life encompasses many aspects rarely celebrated in tales and songs: the patient instruction of the next generation, the careful stewardship of resources, the quiet vigilance that prevents conflict rather than glorifying it. In these less dramatic duties, you have found meaning equal to any battlefield triumph. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, different techniques to demonstrate, Thomas's progress to evaluate, your own skills to maintain despite the subtle advances of age. But for now, in this peaceful moment between day's labor and night's rest, you stand complete in your vocation, a knight not merely in title, but in the fullness of lived commitment to the ideals that title represents. You turn away from the view eventually, making your way toward your chamber. The castle settles around you, guards exchanging quiet reports at the changing of the watch, servants completing final duties before seeking their pallets, horses shifting in the stables below. This community functions through the interdependent efforts of many, your own role essential but not isolated. In your chamber, you remove your formal attire and prepare for sleep, moving through familiar routines with practiced efficiency. A brief prayer concludes the day, offering thanks for safety and guidance while entrusting the morrow to divine providence. As you settle onto your bed, muscles aching pleasantly from the day's exertion, your thoughts drift to tomorrow's training plan. Shield work with Thomas will address his developing strength, while mace techniques will improve his understanding of how different weapons require different tactical approaches. Perhaps Sir William's squires might join for paired exercises. Sleep claims you before these thoughts reach conclusion, the deep restorative rest of one who has spent the day in purposeful labor. This too forms part of a knight's discipline, the wisdom to surrender consciousness when duty allows, storing energy for challenges yet to come. Dawn arrives with its customary color and sound, pale light filtering through shutters, cockerels, announcing morning from the bailey, the distant chanting of monks at prime floating from the chapel. Your body wakes naturally with these signals, trained by years of routine to recognize the proper hour without need for artificial prompting. The day begins, much as yesterday ended, with prayer, with purpose, with the knowledge of specific duties awaiting your attention. You dress simply for morning training, choosing practical garments that allow freedom of movement while offering protection from practice weapons. Thomas arrives as you finish breaking your fast with bread and small beer. The boy's expression, alert, despite signs of lingering fatigue in the shadows beneath his eyes. "Good morning, Sir Geoffrey." He greets you with proper deference. "Good morning, Thomas. Are the shields prepared as I instructed?" "Yes, sir. Practice shields and maces await in the armory." You nod approval at his efficiency and lead the way to the training yard, where morning shadows still stretch long across. Packed earth. The day promises heat, but these early hours offer comfortable conditions for vigorous exercise. Other knights and their squires begin to appear, each pair finding their accustomed training space. The yard gradually fills with the sounds of instruction, sharp commands, the impact of practice weapons against shields and padding, occasional laughter when good-natured competition leads to unexpected outcomes. You position Thomas before you, demonstrating the proper shield grip for mace defense. "The angle matters more than with sword work," you explain, adjusting his arm position. "A mace strikes with concentrated force rather than cutting edge. The shield must deflect that force away from your body rather than simply stopping it." The boy listens intently, his eyes following your movements as you demonstrate with slow, exaggerated motions. His questions reveal growing tactical understanding, not merely asking how to perform techniques, but why certain approaches prove more effective than others. "Why use a mace at all, Sir Geoffrey, when swords seem more precise?" he asks during a brief rest period, water skin passing between you. A thoughtful question. You appreciate his curiosity, the mind behind the martial skills developing alongside the body. Against plate armor, a sword may glance off without effect. The mace concentrates force, causing damage through the armor itself. Different enemies require different weapons. Part of a knight's wisdom lies in making that choice correctly. The training progresses through the morning. Simple blocking techniques, advancing to combinations of defense and counterattack. Static positions giving way to fluid movement around the practice area. You increase the speed and power of your attacks gradually, challenging Thomas's growing skill without overwhelming his development. Sir William approaches with his two squires as the sun reaches mid-morning position. "Care for some paired practice?" he suggests. "Edric could benefit from testing his shield work against someone other than my old arm." You agree readily, seeing the educational value for all involved. The squires are matched reasonably in size and experience, making the exercise productive rather than discouraging. You and William step back, allowing the boys space to apply their training against each other, while you observe and occasionally correct. Thomas shows improvement since spring, William comments quietly. His movements flow more naturally now. He's finding the balance between strength and technique, you agree, watching as your squire successfully deflects a powerful overhead strike before executing a textbook shield push in response. The boy has good instincts when he trusts them. Will, you present him for knighthood after Michaelmas tournaments. The question requires consideration. Thomas has progressed well, but knighthood represents more than physical readiness. Perhaps. I want to see how he handles the pressure of competition first. Tournament performance reveals character as much as skill. William nods understanding. Both of you have seen promising squires falter when facing the reality of combat. Even the constrained violence of tournament can uncover weaknesses not apparent in training. Better to wait than to advance a candidate prematurely, potentially endangering both the young man's life and the reputation of his sponsor. The paired practice continues for nearly an hour, both squires showing commendable effort despite the increasingly oppressive heat. Finally, you call a halt, noting signs of dangerous fatigue in their movements. Well fought, both of you, you acknowledge. Thomas, see to watering and cooling the horses before midday prayers. As the squires depart to their respective duties, you and William make your way toward the castle well, both seeking relief from the heat. The old knight winces slightly as he walks, an old wound troubling him in the changing weather. The northern campaign, you inquire, recognizing the particular nature of his discomfort. Aye, 14 years past, but my leg remembers every detail. He smiles ruefully. One day you'll understand how armor becomes heavier and wounds more talkative with each passing season. You nod respect for his experience while silently acknowledging the truth already making itself known in your own body. The shoulder that aches before rain, the knee that protests during long rides, the fingers of your shield hand that stiffen after extended training. These are the unsung badges of knightly service, more honest than tournament victories or ceremonial recognitions. The afternoon brings different training. Thomas accompanying you to the archery range, where knights practice not for battle use, but for hunting skills. While mounted knights rarely employ bows in warfare, proficiency with hunting weapons forms part of the courtly accomplishments expected of a well-rounded nobleman. Thomas shows natural talent with the bow, his eye keen, and his draw consistent. You correct his stance occasionally, but mostly allow him to develop through practice, each arrow finding its mark with increasing accuracy as the session progresses. The Baron has ordered a hunt for 3 days hence, you inform him between rounds. You'll attend as part of my retinue. It's time you observe the formal hunting protocols. The news brings obvious pleasure to the boy. Inclusion in such aristocratic pursuits represents recognition of his advancing status. Thank you, Sir Geoffrey. I'll study the horn calls tonight. This progression, from pure martial training to the social accomplishments of nobility, forms another aspect of your responsibility as mentor. Thomas must learn not only to fight, but to function within the complex social hierarchy that defines aristocratic life. Hunting, falconry, chess, proper conduct at feasts and tournaments, all must become second nature if he is to advance beyond simple knighthood to potentially serve at more illustrious courts. The day continues its measured pace through afternoon. Practice, prayers, evening meal, and finally preparation for sleep. This rhythm, this alternation of physical exertion, spiritual observance, social obligation, and necessary rest creates the structure within which a knight's development occurs. Not through dramatic single events, but through the accumulated effect of thousands of such days, each building imperceptibly upon the last. As darkness settles over the castle once more, you complete a letter to your brother regarding estate matters before extinguishing your candle. Tomorrow will bring its own variations on these essential themes. Different techniques to practice, different administrative tasks to complete, different social interactions to navigate. Yet the underlying purpose remains constant. The daily living of knighthood's ideals through ordinary actions performed with extraordinary commitment. This is the reality behind the minstrel's romanticized accounts, not the occasional glorious charge into battle, but the patient discipline of training, yard and council chamber, chapel and estate field. In this consistent devotion to duty small and great, the true meaning of knighthood reveals itself not as momentary heroism, but as lifelong service to values beyond oneself. Days pass in this manner, each similar yet unique, forming the tapestry of a knight's existence in times of relative peace. The occasional tournament provides opportunity to test skills against worthy opponents and enhance reputation through honorable performance. Administrative duties, mediating minor disputes among tenants, overseeing improvements to family lands, attending the Baron's Council, occupy increased portions of your time as your judgment earns greater trust. Thomas continues his development. Under your guidance, his progress satisfying, though never perfect. Some skills come naturally to him. Horsemanship, archery, the social graces required at formal functions. Others require more intensive effort, shield work, tactical understanding of battlefield formations, the patience needed for long campaigns. Through it all, you shape not only his martial abilities but his character, correcting instances of excessive pride, encouraging compassion toward those of lower station, demonstrating through example the proper balance between necessary violence and restraint. These less tangible lessons prove more challenging to impart than sword techniques, but ultimately matter more to the knight he will become. Autumn approaches, bringing cooler training conditions and preparations for the Michaelmas tournament. Thomas will participate in the Squires competition for the first time, a significant milestone in his progression toward knighthood. His nervousness manifests in increased dedication to practice, often continuing with sword drills long after other squires have retired for the evening. Exhaustion won't improve your performance, you counsel, finding him alone in the yard one night, practicing cuts by torchlight. Rest is as important as training before competition. The boy lowers his practice sword, breathing heavily. I fear disappointing you, Sir Geoffrey. The admission, honest in its vulnerability, reminds you of your own anxieties as a squire facing first tournament. Listen well, Thomas. Victory matters less than conduct. Fight with honor, show courtesy in either outcome, and you cannot truly disappoint me or yourself. He absorbs this wisdom slowly, nodding understanding even as his expression reveals the natural desire for triumph common to all young warriors. You remember Sir Roland offering similar counsel before your first competition. Advice that seemed impossible to fully embrace until experience taught its truth through both victories and defeats. The tournament week arrives with the traditional excitement, banners raised above pavilions, merchants setting up stalls to serve the gathering crowds, heralds announcing the arrival of noble participants from neighboring lands. Thomas assists you in preparing equipment with meticulous care, checking each strap and buckle of tournament armor, polishing your shield until the falcon crest gleams in autumn sunlight. His own competition comes on the second day. 16 squires from various households competing in sword and shield exercises, judged by experienced knights. You watch from horseback at the field's edge, deliberately maintaining distance rather than hovering anxiously nearby. The boy must stand or fall on his own merits now, your training tested through his performance. Thomas acquits himself well, advancing through early rounds with solid technique and appropriate aggression. His final match pits him against Sir William's senior squire Edric, a contest of contrasting styles, Thomas's fluidity against Edric's power. The outcome remains uncertain until the final exchanges, when Thomas's superior footwork creates an opening for the decisive strike that earns the judge's approval. The victory brings obvious joy to the boy's face, though he controls his celebration with appropriate restraint, offering respectful acknowledgement to his defeated opponent. This balance between natural pride and humble courtesy speaks well of his developing character. Your own competition follows over subsequent days, jousting against knights from across the region, melee combat that tests endurance as much as skill, mounted archery, demonstrating mastery of multiple disciplines. Years of experience serve you well, advancing through rounds against younger opponents whose greater strength you counter with superior technique and tactical awareness. The semi-final joust pits you against Sir Gareth, the promising young knight, whose raw talent has earned him significant reputation despite limited experience. His lance work shows impressive precision as you thunder toward each other on the first pass, both strikes landing squarely on opposing shields. Neither knight falters, continuing to the field's end and wheeling for a second approach. 3 passes end without decisive advantage, the crowd's excitement building with each thundering encounter. On the 4th, you notice a subtle tell in Gareth's position, a slight shift that telegraphs his intended target area. Adjusting your shield angle in the final moment, you deflect his lance upward while your own strike lands perfectly at the optimal impact point. The younger knight reels but maintains his seat, a testament to his skill. The judges award you the victory on technical merit, advance pointing Aldous toward the victor's position to acknowledge the crowd's approval. Sir Gareth raises his visor, meeting your eyes with respectful acknowledgement of the lesson provided through defeat. The final match against a visiting knight from the royal household ends in honourable defeat, your technique meeting its match. In an opponent who combines youth's vigour with veteran experience, you accept the outcome with grace, recognizing that second place among such distinguished company brings no dishonour. During the evening feast that concludes the tournament, Baron, Edmund summons you to the high table, an unusual honour signifying particular favour. Your performance brought credit to our household, he acknowledges, raising his goblet in salute, and your squire's victory speaks well of your instruction. I am grateful for your recognition, my lord. The formal response covers deeper satisfaction in Thomas's achievement than in your own respectable showing. The boy shows promise. Do you judge him ready for advancement after Yuletide? The question, whether Thomas might be prepared for knighthood within months, requires careful consideration. With your permission, my lord, I would continue his training through spring. There are aspects of leadership he has yet to fully develop. The Baron nods acceptance of your assessment. As Thomas's direct instructor, your judgment in this matter carries significant weight. As you recommend, but prepare him well. I foresee need for fresh knights before next harvest. The northern border grows restless again. This information, shared quietly amid celebration, carries implications beyond Thomas's personal development. Political tensions that might require military response demand accelerated preparation of promising squires, balancing thorough training against practical necessity. You return to your place among fellow knights with this knowledge adding weight to your responsibilities. Thomas must be ready not merely for tournament performance, but potentially for true combat within the year. Your training program will need adjustment, more emphasis on formation fighting, on enduring the chaos and fear of battlefield conditions, on making decisions under extreme pressure. The tournament's conclusion brings return to normal castle rhythms, though with renewed focus on your instructional duties. Thomas notices the subtle intensification of training without understanding its specific cause. Have I disappointed you, Sir Geoffrey? He asks after a particularly demanding session that left him bruised and exhausted. Quite the opposite, you assure him. Your tournament performance proved your readiness for more advanced instruction. The partial truth suffices. He need not carry the burden of knowing potential combat approaches until absolutely necessary. Autumn deepens toward winter, daylight hours shortening, and training sessions moving increasingly indoors to the covered portions of the yard. Thomas masters new techniques with growing confidence, occasionally sharing his knowledge with younger squires, a development you encourage, recognizing that teaching others solidifies one's own understanding while developing leadership capacity. Your relationship evolves subtly during these months. Still master and student, but with increasing elements of mentor and protege. Conversations extend beyond immediate training concerns to broader topics. The political relationships between noble houses, the philosophical underpinnings of chivalric ideals, the practical realities of managing estates and retainers. During an evening discussion of upcoming Yuletide celebrations, Thomas asks about your first campaign, a subject you've rarely discussed in detail. Something in his expression suggests this isn't mere curiosity, but preparation. The boy sensing the approaching threshold of knighthood and seeking insight into experiences that await beyond it. You consider carefully before responding, balancing honest preparation against unnecessary fear. It was along the Scottish March, you begin, keeping your tone measured. I had been knighted barely 3 months when Lord Walter's call to arms came. The account you provide emphasizes reality without glorification or excessive darkness. The discomfort of continuous armor wear, the confusion of rapidly changing orders, moments of genuine terror interspersed with long periods of tedious waiting. Thomas listens with unusual stillness, absorbing not just your words but the emotions that color certain memories even after nearly 20 years. Were you afraid? He asks finally, the question coming with the directness of genuine need rather than challenge. Yes, you answer simply. Any knight who claims otherwise either lies or lacks imagination. Courage isn't absence of fear, Thomas, but action despite it. He nods slowly, processing this truth that contradicts the simpler narratives of minstrels' tales. How did you manage it? Prayer, training, trust in my brothers in arms, and ultimately, acceptance that some outcomes lie in God's hands rather than our own. You pause, ensuring he understands the full implication. A knight prepares as thoroughly as possible, then proceeds with faith that duty fulfilled matters more than whether he lives to receive earthly recognition for it. The conversation concludes with Thomas more subdued than usual, not from discouragement, but from deeper contemplation of knighthood's realities. You recognize this transition in his understanding, another step from boyhood's simplistic idealism toward the complex commitment that true knighthood represents. Winter arrives with bitter cold and shortened training hours outdoors. Focus shifts to indoor exercises, dagger techniques in confined spaces, grappling methods effective against armored opponents, study of historical battles and their strategic lessons. Thomas applies himself with increased seriousness, his tournament victory having transformed abstract possibility into concrete aspiration. During Yuletide celebrations, you observe his conduct in social settings with critical attention. The boy, nearly a man now, navigates complex court protocols with growing assurance, maintaining appropriate deference to rank while demonstrating the quiet confidence expected of one approaching knighthood. Baron Edmund summons you to private council as the new year begins, confirming your earlier concerns. Border reports grow troubling, he informs you without preamble. We may face campaign by early summer. How proceeds your squire's preparation? Well, my lord, Thomas absorbs instruction quickly and shows good judgment in practice scenarios. And his character, will he uphold our standards when tested? The question cuts to the heart of your responsibility as mentor. I believe so. He understands that privilege brings obligation rather than license. His conduct shows respect for those above and below his station. The Baron nods, satisfied with your assessment. Prepare him for Easter dubbing then. Sir Roland's injury means we need another sword in our company. The directive, while expected, brings both pride and concern. Pride in Thomas's readiness, concern for the accelerated timeline driven by political necessity rather than optimal development. Still, many knights have been dubbed with less preparation than Thomas has received under your guidance. You inform Thomas of the decision that evening, observing his reaction carefully. The news brings visible joy immediately tempered by solemnity as its implications register fully. "I will strive to bring honor to your teaching, Sir Geoffrey," he says with genuine feeling. "I know you will." Your response carries confidence, earned through years of observation. Now our work intensifies. 3 months remain to polish what 5 years have built. The training schedule increases in rigor accordingly. Longer hours, more complex scenarios, higher expectations for performance under pressure. You arrange for Thomas to participate in manor court sessions, observing practical application of justice and occasionally offering measured opinion when invited. These experiences, while less dramatic than combat training, prepare him equally well for knighthood's judicial responsibilities. Winter gradually yields to early spring, the landscape awakening around the castle as Thomas's preparation nears completion. A final assessment occurs not through formal examination, but through accumulated observation. You and other senior knights evaluating the young man's readiness through his daily conduct and response to increasingly challenging situations. "He'll serve you well," Sir William comments one evening, watching Thomas demonstrate sword techniques to younger squires. "You've shaped good steel there." The metaphor, comparing your mentorship to a blacksmith's craft, strikes you as particularly apt. Like metal in a forge, potential alone means nothing without proper tempering, careful shaping, and precise finishing. The raw material of Thomas's character and ability has been transformed through patient work into something of lasting value. As Easter approaches, traditional preparations for knighting begin. Thomas fasts and prays with increasing frequency, preparing spiritually for the sacred vows he will soon take. You oversee the final details of his equipment, ensuring his first true armor fits properly, that his sword is balanced specifically for his hand, that the simple surcoat bearing his family's modest arms is properly emblazoned. The night before the ceremony, Thomas observes the traditional vigil in the chapel, kneeling through darkness before the altar, his armor and weapons laid out for blessing, his soul examining itself for readiness to bear knighthood's burdens. You visit briefly during the midnight hour, offering silent support through your presence before withdrawing to allow his private communion with God. Dawn brings the ceremony itself, Thomas pale from night-long vigil, but standing straight as Baron Edmund and assembled knights gather in the chapel. Father Gregory intones the ancient blessings over sword and spurs, the Latin phrases linking this moment to countless similar ceremonies, stretching back through centuries of chivalric tradition. When the Baron gestures you forward to perform the dubbing itself, unexpected emotion tightens your throat momentarily. This privilege, to bring your student formally into the brotherhood of knighthood, represents culmination of your most significant peacetime service. Thomas kneels before you, head bowed in perfect stillness. You draw your sword, the same blade that has served through your own knightly career, and place it lightly on his right shoulder. In the name of God, Saint Michael and Saint George, you speak the traditional formula, voice steady despite inner emotion. I dub thee knight. Be brave, be loyal, be true. The sword touches his left shoulder, then comes to rest briefly upon his head, symbolizing the responsibilities he now accepts to defend the faith, serve his Lord, and protect the innocent. When you step back, Thomas raises his eyes to yours, for a brief moment before lowering them again in appropriate humility. Baron Edmund completes the ceremony, presenting the new knight with gilded spurs and formally addressing him as Sir Thomas for the first time. The assembled company offers congratulations according to rank and precedence, each established knight welcoming their newest brother with words of encouragement or wisdom. When formal observances conclude, you find a private moment with your former squire, now Sir Thomas in truth and title. Words seem inadequate for the significance of this transition in both your lives, but some things must be said nonetheless. The true test begins now, you tell him quietly. Remember that knighthood is not a culmination but a beginning, not a reward but a responsibility. I will strive to honor your teaching through my service, he responds, emotion making his voice slightly unsteady. Thank you, Sir Geoffrey, for all you have given me. The simple gratitude, genuine and heartfelt, brings deeper satisfaction than any tournament victory or battlefield commendation you have received. In this moment, watching your student cross the threshold into the brotherhood you have served for decades, you recognize the completion of your most important work. Not the work of creating a perfect knight, for such creatures exist only in minstrels' imaginations, but of shaping a man who understands knighthood's true meaning. Daily recommitment to ideals that human frailty can approach but never fully achieve. Thomas will face his own challenges, make his own mistakes, find his own path within the broad parameters of chivalric service. Celebration continues throughout the day, a special mass, a feast where Sir Thomas occupies a place of honor, traditional, games demonstrating martial skills for the assembled community. You observe his conduct with quiet pride, noting the balance he maintains between justified pleasure in his achievement and humble recognition of responsibilities newly assumed. As evening descends, festivities gradually subside. Knights and nobles retire to chambers or continue quieter conversations over wine. Common folk return to villages and farms, carrying stories of the day's events to share with those unable to attend. You find yourself once again on the castle walkway, gazing out over darkening countryside as stars appear overhead. The cycle continues. Another night added to the company, another link forged in the chain of traditions stretching back to time immemorial and forward beyond your own mortal span. In this moment of completion and new beginning, you reflect on your own journey from anxious squire to seasoned knight to mentor. Each role has brought its unique challenges and satisfactions, each representing necessary stages in a life dedicated to ideals larger than individual ambition. Sir Thomas joins you eventually, drawn perhaps by similar contemplative impulse. You stand in companionable silence for a time, master and former student now brothers in the same ancient order. What comes next? He asks finally, the question encompassing far more than immediate plans. We serve, you answer simply. One day, at a time, in war or peace, in glory or obscurity, we serve the ideals we've sworn to uphold. He nods understanding, accepting both the simplicity and the profound complexity contained in those two words. Together you watch darkness settle completely over the land you've both pledged to protect. A quiet moment of reflection before tomorrow brings new duties, new challenges, new opportunities to embody the ancient ideal of knighthood through ordinary actions performed with extraordinary commitment. Sunlight streams through stained glass windows, casting jeweled patterns across worn stone floors. In a castle chapel, far from the din of battle, a different kind of knightly service unfolds. One of contemplation, devotion, and spiritual struggle that forms the invisible foundation of chivalric virtue. You awaken while stars still glimmer, outside the narrow window of your chamber. No bell has rung to disturb the pre-dawn silence, yet your body knows this hour as intimately as it knows the weight of sword or the shape of prayer. For 20 years since taking your nightly vows, you have risen for matins, the night office that monks observe with unwavering devotion, and that devout knights honor when duties and circumstances permit. Your bare feet touch the cold stone floor, a small discomfort embraced rather than avoided. The chill air raises gooseflesh on your arms as you move quietly through darkness toward the small table where flint and candle wait. A few practice strikes bring flame to life, golden light pushing back shadows just enough to illuminate your immediate surroundings. The chamber is sparse by noble standards. A bed with linen sheets and woolen blankets, a wooden chest containing your personal possessions, weapons mounted on the wall, not for decoration, but ready use, a small writing desk where you occasionally pen letters to family or record estate accounts by candlelight, a tapestry depicting St. George, gift from your sister upon your knighthood, provides the room's only true luxury, its faded colours telling of years spent hanging in various chambers as you've moved in service to your lord. You dress simply, but appropriately for prayer. Clean linen shirt beneath a woolen tunic, embroidered with your modest family crest. Plain leather belt and boots rather than the ornate versions worn for court functions. No armour is needed this day. Baron Edmund has declared it for rest and devotion following yesterday's return from patrol along the western borders. From beneath your mattress, you withdraw a small bound volume, your personal psalter, its parchment pages worn smooth at edges from years of daily handling. Unlike elaborate versions owned by wealthy nobles, this book bears minimal decoration, focusing instead on clarity of text. Its Latin passages have become familiar through daily recitation, though your understanding remains imperfect, limited by the practical education afforded to a knight of modest background. Candle in hand, you make your way through silent corridors, nodding acknowledgement to the night guards who stand watch even during peaceful times. Their eyes reflect momentary surprise at seeing a knight abroad so early, but recognition of your habits brings understanding. "God give you good morning, Sir Geoffrey," one murmurs with appropriate deference. "And you, Martin," you respond quietly, noting the young guard's alert posture despite the challenging hour. Good discipline, a credit to Sir William's training of the household troops. Outside, the bailey lies hushed under starlight. Your breath forms visible clouds in the cold spring air as you cross toward the chapel. A modest stone structure attached to the main keep, its squat tower barely visible against the pre-dawn sky. Unlike great cathedrals with their soaring ambitions or monastery churches with their extensive choirs, this castle chapel serves practical spiritual needs for a military household, its architecture solid and unpretentious as the faith it houses. The chapel door opens silently on well-oiled hinges, your own contribution to the building's maintenance, an unnoticed service performed monthly with the same attention you give to weapon care. Inside, darkness is nearly complete, save for the perpetual lamp burning before the altar, its small flame symbolizing Christ's eternal presence. You light 2 candles from your own, placing them in iron holders flanking the altar. The gentle illumination reveals familiar features. Stone walls hung with simple tapestries depicting saints particularly revered by warriors. Wooden benches for the household's attendance during required services. The Baron's elevated seat positioned for proper recognition of rank even in God's presence. No one else occupies the space at this hour. Father Gregory will arrive later to prepare for prime, when more of the household will attend as required by daily schedule. This earlier time, this voluntary observance, belongs to personal devotion rather than communal obligation. You kneel on the stone floor before the altar, the cold hardness against your knees accepted as minor mortification of the flesh. Physical discomfort serves its purpose in spiritual practice, a reminder of bodily limitations that contrast with the soul's aspirations toward transcendence. Too much comfort breeds complacency. Too little becomes distraction. This balanced, middle path suits your practical spirituality. Opening your psalter to markings that indicate readings for this particular day, you begin the recitation of matins in a voice barely above whisper. The Latin words flow from memory as much as from the page, your pronunciation shaped by years of hearing properly educated clerics perform these same offices. Domine, labia mea aperis, etos meum annunciabit laudem tuum. O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim thy praise. The ancient words settle into the chapel's silence, generations of faithful having uttered these same phrases in countless sacred spaces. This continuity, this connection to believers across time and distance through shared devotion, provides foundation for a night's spiritual identity beyond individual circumstances or worldly position. As you continue through the prescribed readings, your mind occasionally wanders despite disciplined intention, reviewing yesterday's border patrol findings, considering training plans for newer nights under your supervision, remembering your sister's recent letter describing your niece's marriage arrangements. Each time, you gently redirect attention to the prayers, accepting these distractions as natural aspects of human limitation rather than causes for self-condemnation. Spiritual practice for a night differs from a monk's total dedication or a peasant's simple faith. Your vocation requires integration rather than separation, bringing spiritual principles into worldly affairs rather than retreating from them. The challenge lies in maintaining this balance. Enough worldly engagement to fulfill sworn duties, enough spiritual detachment to remember their ultimate purpose. Your devotions continue through the traditional structure, psalms interspersed, with readings and responses, the rhythm established centuries before your birth and continuing long after you return to dust. The familiarity brings comfort without diminishing significance. Like sword practice that repeats fundamental movements until they become instinct, spiritual disciplines work through faithful repetition that gradually transforms the practitioner. As you complete the final blessing, soft footfalls announce another presence. Father Gregory, the castle chaplain, enters carrying additional candles to prepare for the coming service. The elderly priest nods acknowledgement of your presence without interrupting your prayers. When you finish and close your psalter, he approaches with a gentle smile. Your devotion puts my aging bones to shame, Sir Geoffrey. I might have slumbered longer had duty not called. Your calling demands more consistent observance than mine, Father. You respond, rising from your knees with the slight stiffness that recent campaigns have left in your joints. I attend when circumstances allow. You maintain the hours regardless of personal comfort. The old priest waves away the comparison. Different vocations, different measures. God sees the heart's intention beyond outward observance. He begins arranging items for morning mass. Will you break your fast with me? After prime, the kitchen has prepared fresh bread, and I've received a gift of honey from the abbey. The invitation comes regularly when your duties permit extended morning prayer. These quiet meals with Father Gregory have become valued opportunities for spiritual discussion more substantive than formal confession allows. Conversations that nourish your faith's understanding as bread nourishes the body. Gladly, you accept, moving to assist with practical preparations despite the priest's protestations that such tasks lie beneath a knight's dignity. This small service, lighting candles, arranging prayer books for noble attendees who might struggle with finding correct passages, feels appropriate rather than demeaning. Christ himself washed disciples' feet. Surely a knight can perform minor tasks in his house. Gradually, the chapel fills as prime approaches. Household knights arrive, in small groups, their conversation hushing respectfully at the threshold. Baron Edmund enters with his immediate family just before the service begins, acknowledging your presence with a slight nod that communicates approval of your devotional diligence. The morning office proceeds with formal dignity, Latin responses echoing from stone walls as the household fulfills its communal obligation to mark the day's beginning with prayer. You observe varying levels of engagement among fellow knights, some participating with evident sincerity, others merely fulfilling required appearance, a few struggling against sleep after late watches or overindulgence at last night's table. You notice Sir Thomas, knighted last Easter after completing training under your guidance, following the service with particular attention, his lips moving carefully to form Latin phrases still imperfectly memorized. The young knight catches your observation and straightens slightly, like a squire still seeking approval despite his changed status. Your slight nod offers encouragement without interrupting his devotions. When communal prayers conclude, the household disperses to various duties and breakfast. You remain behind with Father Gregory, following him through a small side door into the modest chamber that serves as both his living quarters and the chapel's sacristy. The space reflects its occupant's character. Simple furnishings, but carefully arranged, books stacked in ordered piles rather than haphazard heaps. A small writing desk positioned to capture morning light through the room's single window. A crucifix carved from olive wood, brought back from pilgrimage to the Holy Land in Father Gregory's younger years, hangs on the wall above a narrow bed. The priest gestures toward a small table where bread, honey, and 2 cups of watered wine await. Please, sit. These old bones prefer to rest when duty permits. You take the offered seat, breaking bread with reverent appreciation for God's provision. The honey, golden and aromatic, transforms simple fare into moderate luxury. Father Gregory offers brief blessing before beginning his own meal, movements measured by decades of monastic training before his assignment to castle service. The Baron seemed preoccupied during service, the priest observes, after several moments of companionable silence. Did the border patrol discover concerning signs? You consider your response carefully. While Father Gregory holds the Baron's confidence, matters of security require discretion. Nothing certain, you answer truthfully. Signs of increased movement near the western forests, but whether from outlaws, travelers, or neighboring forces, remains unclear. The priest nods understanding. I shall pray for continued peace. These people have barely recovered from last season's poor harvest, without adding martial troubles. This concern for commoners' welfare, genuine rather than perfunctory, represents one reason you value the old priest's counsel. Unlike some clerics who align themselves exclusively with noble interests, Father Gregory maintains perspective on how high politics affects humble lives. I've been considering the virtue of prudence, you say after another thoughtful silence. How it differs from mere caution, or worse, fear disguised as wisdom. Father Gregory's eyes brighten with intellectual engagement. An excellent distinction many fail to recognize. Prudence requires clear sight of actual conditions, neither magnifying nor diminishing threats. Fear distorts perception. Caution may avoid immediate danger, but miss greater purpose. The conversation turns to how this virtue applies specifically to nightly duties, when restraint serves honor better than action, when intervention becomes necessary despite personal risk. These discussions, philosophical yet practically grounded, help refine your understanding of how chivalric ideals translate into daily decisions. I've assigned Sir Thomas to train younger squires in basic sword forms, you mention, as the meal concludes. His technique is excellent, but I'm uncertain whether his patience matches his skill. Teaching reveals character as surely as combat, Father Gregory observes. We understand principles truly only when attempting to convey them to others. The observation carries wisdom you've experienced directly. Your own understanding of knighthood deepened significantly through years instructing Thomas and other squires. Concepts that seemed intuitively obvious required explicit articulation when teaching, forcing clearer examination of fundamental principles often taken for granted. Morning light strengthens outside the window, signaling time to move from spiritual reflection toward worldly duties awaiting attention. You rise, thanking the priest for both nourishment and conversation. Will you attend sext? Father Gregory inquires, referring to midday prayers. I plan to address the virtue of fortitude, perhaps relevant to your current considerations. If duties permit, you respond honestly. The Baron mentioned council meeting that may extend through midday. The old priest nods acceptance of this conditional commitment. Unlike some clerics who demand absolute prioritization of religious observance regardless of circumstances, Father Gregory recognizes the practical necessities of castle life and service obligations. This balance, honoring spiritual practices without impractical rigidity, aligns with your own approach to integrating faith within knightly vocation. You depart the chapel into full morning sunshine, the bailey now bustling with daily activities. Servants cross the courtyard carrying linens and foodstuffs. Stable boys lead horses to exercise. Men-at-arms practice formations under a sergeant's watchful supervision. The castle functions as both military installation and small community, each person's labor contributing to collective security and sustenance. Your own duties this morning begin with inspection of the armory, ensuring equipment returned from Border Patrol has been properly cleaned and stored, identifying items requiring blacksmith's attention, confirming inventory matches records maintained by the castle steward. This responsibility, unglamorous but essential, reflects the practical foundation beneath knighthood's more celebrated aspects. The armory keeper, old Cedric, greets you with appropriate respect as you enter the stone building adjacent to the main barracks. Sir Geoffrey, all cleaned and accounted for, save Sir Gareth's second shield that took damage from falling rock, sent to Thomas the Smith for rebinding. You nod approval, beginning systematic examination of each weapon rack and armor stand. Cedric follows at respectful distance, occasionally offering information about specific items' conditions or repair. History, the man's dedication to his charge, mirrors your own approach to duty. Thorough attention to details others might consider beneath notice. The Fletcher delivered new arrows yesterday, Cedric mentions as you inspect the archery section. 30 hunting points and 50 warheads as ordered. You examine several arrows from each batch, checking straightness, fletch attachment, and point security. Good work. Have the hunting arrows distributed to knight's individual equipment. Warheads remain in central storage. This division reflects current circumstances. Hunting activities continue regularly, while military action remains potential rather than immediate. Should border concerns escalate, different distribution would follow established protocol. Inspection complete. You make notes regarding minor repairs needed and equipment approaching replacement age. Resource management. anticipating needs before they become urgent, represents another aspect of knightly responsibility, often unmentioned in minstrels' tales. Practical foresight prevents future shortages that might compromise security or readiness. Morning advances toward midday as you complete this duty and move to the training yard, where Sir Thomas instructs 4 squires in basic sword positions. You observe from distance sufficient to avoid undermining his authority while allowing assessment of his teaching approach. The young knight demonstrates proper techniques with fluid precision before watching each squire attempt replication. His corrections come firmly but without unnecessary harshness, focusing on specific adjustments rather than general criticism. When one boy, clearly frustrated by repeated failure, begins losing composure, Thomas pauses the group exercise to offer private guidance, speaking quietly with encouraging gestures until the squire regains confidence. This balanced approach, maintaining discipline while recognizing individual needs, suggests Thomas has internalized your own teaching methods more thoroughly than you realized. Pride in your former students' development mingles with satisfaction that knightly virtues continue transmission to yet another generation. The chapel bell rings for midday prayers, its clear tone carrying across the bailey. You note Thomas immediately halting practice, directing squires to properly store practice weapons before attending sext. This prompt response to spiritual obligation, without complaint about interrupted instruction, further confirms the young knight's appropriate prioritization of duties. A messenger approaches before you can decide whether to attend chapel or proceed to the council chamber. Sir Geoffrey, Baron Edmund requests your immediate presence in council. You acknowledge with a nod, mentally shifting focus from training evaluation to political matters likely awaiting discussion. The transition comes easily after years balancing varied responsibilities: spiritual devotion, martial training, administrative duties, political counsel, each representing essential aspects of knighthood's complete expression. The council chamber occupies an upper floor of the main keep, its location providing both security for sensitive discussions and practical separation from the castle's busier areas. Windows facing east and south offer abundant light for document examination, while providing views of both the main approach road and the western border region recently patrolled. Baron Edmund sits at the head of a heavy oak table flanked by his steward and chancellor. 3 other knights, Sir William, Sir Roland, and Sir Gareth, occupy places according to seniority. You take your assigned position, noting parchment maps spread across the table's surface and a visitor, richly dressed, but travel-worn, seated near the Baron's right hand. Sir Geoffrey, you know Lord Harrington's seneschal, Master Edwin, the Baron states, rather than asks, proceeding immediately to business. He brings concerning reports that may confirm observations from your patrol. The visitor nods greeting. Without rising, his expression grave beneath a neatly trimmed grey beard. Sir Geoffrey, our border wardens report increased movement beyond the western marches. Armed men gathering in numbers beyond typical outlaw bands, bearing no lords recognized colours. This information, delivered with appropriately measured concern rather than panic, aligns with subtle signs observed during your recent patrol. Unusual game movement patterns suggesting disturbance deeper in the forests, abandoned campsites, larger than typical traveller groups would create, local peasants reporting distant sounds of metalwork at night. How many men? Sir William asks, his weathered face showing the focused calculation of a veteran commander assessing potential threats. Reports vary, Master Edwin responds cautiously. Perhaps 60, perhaps 100, moving in smaller groups that periodically converge, My lord believes they gather strength before revealing purpose. Discussion continues through detailed analysis of regional politics, possible motivations, and appropriate responses to this uncertain threat. Maps are consulted, defensive capabilities assessed, messenger systems reviewed to ensure rapid communication. Should suspicious movement become overt aggression? Your contribution focuses on practical security measures, recommending increased but unobtrusive patrols, suggesting specific rally points for rapid response forces, identifying vulnerable settlements that might require additional protection. These recommendations reflect both tactical understanding, developed through campaign experience, and intimate knowledge of local geography gained through years serving this particular region. Throughout the discussion, you maintain the balanced, perspective morning conversation with Father Gregory emphasized, neither dismissing potential threats nor magnifying uncertain intelligence into certain danger. This middle path, prudent preparation without premature escalation, seems to meet Baron Edmund's approval based on his thoughtful nods during your contributions. Council concludes with clear directives, increased watchfulness without obvious military build-up that might provoke the very conflict best avoided, discreet communication with neighboring loyal lords to establish mutual support agreements, preparation of emergency supply caches at strategic locations should rapid deployment become necessary. As council members depart to implement specific assignments, Baron Edmund gestures for you to remain behind. When others have left, he speaks directly. Your assessment, Sir Geoffrey, not the cautious version shared in open council, but your honest judgment of what we face. This private request, this confidence between Lord and trusted knight, requires absolute honesty tempered by appropriate respect. My lord, the pattern suggests preparation rather than immediate threat. Not simple banditry, but organized force-building capability, whether for leverage in negotiation or actual aggression, remains unclear. And your recommendation beyond what was discussed? You consider carefully before responding. Quiet preparation serves us better than visible mobilization. But I would suggest reviewing castle defense provisions, water supplies, food stores, medicinal herbs, under guise of normal, seasonal inventory rather than emergency measures, and perhaps accelerated training for promising squires, should we need additional knighted swords. The Baron nods slowly, his expression revealing the weight of responsibility for lands and people under his protection. See to those preparations, personally if you would. Discretion serves us best until intentions become clearer. You bow acknowledgement of both the assignment and the trust it represents. This relationship, lord and knight bound by mutual obligation rather than simple authority, forms the foundation of feudal society's proper functioning. Your oath provides martial service. His protection enables that service. Both ultimately serve the common good when properly aligned with chivalric principles. Departing the council chamber, you find afternoon sun past its zenith. Sextlong concluded. The missed devotional observance brings momentary regret, quickly balanced by recognition that duties fulfilled according to proper priority themselves constitute spiritual practice. Father Gregory often quotes Augustine on this point. Ordered love means loving the right things in the right proportion, spiritual matters above worldly concerns, but worldly obligations fulfilled as expressions of spiritual commitment. You make your way toward the chapel nonetheless, drawn by desire to offer brief private prayer before beginning newly assigned preparations. The stone building stands quiet between formal observance hours, its interior cool and shadowed after bright afternoon sunshine outside. Kneeling briefly before the altar, you offer silent prayer combining thanksgiving for continued peace with petition for wisdom in preparation for potential conflict. No elaborate formula shapes these words, just direct communication from warrior's heart to divine understanding, grounded in relationship built through years of faithful practice. Rising from prayer, you notice Father Gregory arranging items in a side alcove, preparing for afternoon instruction of castle children in basic catechism. The priest glances up, offering silent blessing with a gentle gesture before returning to his task without interrupting your devotions. This mutual respect, this recognition of different but complementary vocations serving same ultimate purpose, characterizes your relationship with the old priest. Neither assumes superiority, martial protection and spiritual guidance, each necessary for community welfare, each incomplete without the other. Leaving the chapel, you begin systematic implementation of preparations discussed in council. First to the castle steward for review of supply inventories, then to the master-at-arms for discussion of training acceleration, followed by inspection of water cisterns and defensive equipment too rarely examined during peaceful periods. These practical tasks, unglamorous but essential, occupy remaining daylight hours. Throughout each interaction, you maintain calm confidence that communicates appropriate concern without causing alarm among castle residents. Balance matters in leadership. As in combat, neither complacency nor panic serves effective preparation. As evening approaches, the chapel bell announces vespers. This time duties permit attendance, and you join the household gathering for sunset prayers. The familiar Latin phrases wash over you, bringing perspective to today's concerns. Kingdoms rise and fall, borders shift, alliances form and dissolve. Yet, the ancient words endure, connecting this moment to countless others across centuries. You notice Sir Thomas across the chapel, his expression reflecting similar contemplation. The young knight has completed one full day instructing squires, his first significant leadership responsibility since elevation from student to teacher. His demeanor suggests the experience has prompted reflection on cycles of learning and transmission that maintain chivalric tradition through generations. After Vespers concludes, you approach him in the bailey. "How fared your first day as instructor?" Thomas straightens slightly, still adjusting to interaction as peer rather than subordinate despite months bearing knightly title. "Challenging, Sir Geoffrey. I never realized how much patience you showed during my own training until attempting the same with Johann." The boy struggles to coordinate movement and attention. You smile slightly, remembering similar frustrations during Thomas's early instruction. Teaching reveals our own imperfections more clearly than any mirror. We see our past struggles reflected in our students. The observation prompts thoughtful nod from the younger knight. Father Gregory mentioned something similar during confession last week, that instructing others requires deeper understanding than performing actions ourselves. This parallel between your earlier conversation with the priest and Thomas's independent experience reinforces the universal nature of such wisdom. Principles rediscovered by each generation maintain continuity while allowing personal ownership through direct experience. As sunset colors fade from western sky, castle routine shifts toward evening activities. The evening meal awaits in the great hall, followed by limited recreational hours before night prayers and rest. This rhythm, work, worship, communal sustenance, measured leisure, rest, provides structure that supports both physical welfare and spiritual discipline. Baron Edmund summons you to the high table during the evening meal, a periodic honor reflecting your senior position among household knights, rather than regular arrangement. The conversation remains deliberately light despite morning council's concerns, focusing instead on upcoming spring tournament preparations and recent communications from court regarding royal family matters. This balance, maintaining normal routines while quietly implementing precautionary measures, represents prudent leadership during uncertain times. Visible anxiety spreads rapidly through hierarchical communities. Calm continuity from authority figures prevents disruptive speculation among those not yet needing operational details. After the meal concludes, you join several knights in the small side chamber reserved for their evening relaxation before compline. Prayers. A chessboard occupies one table, dice game another, while comfortable benches along walls provide space for conversation or quiet contemplation, depending on individual preference. Sir William gestures invitation to the chess table, setting up carved pieces with practiced precision. The old knight's strategic thinking extends beyond battlefield to this table exercise, his moves revealing complex planning and patient execution that younger opponents often lack. You accept the challenge, taking position opposite your longtime companion through numerous campaigns. Conversation develops alongside game progression, moving naturally between casual observations about castle life and deeper reflections on knightly vocation. This fellowship, this bond between warriors who have faced mortality together, creates space for wisdom exchange impossible in formal settings. Young Thomas shows promise as instructor, William comments, advancing a pawn in subtle positional play rather than aggressive attack. Reminds me of you at similar age, demanding but not discouraging. You consider both the chess move and the observation before responding, seeing connections between them. His technique exceeds his patience currently, but experience will balance enthusiasm with understanding, as with most skills. William nods agreement, watching your countermove with narrowed eyes that miss nothing despite advancing years. The best instructors remember their own struggles clearly. Perfect knights make terrible teachers, if such creatures existed at all. The game proceeds through measured exchanges, neither player rushing toward decisive engagement without proper preparation. Other knights occasionally observe key positions, offering comments or questions that reveal their own strategic understanding. This activity, competitive yet companionable, demanding mental discipline alongside social interaction, provides valuable counterbalance to today's physical exertions and administrative responsibilities. A knight's mind requires exercise alongside body and spirit for complete development. The chess match concludes in draw by mutual acknowledgement. Neither player able to gain decisive advantage despite creative attempts. This outcome satisfies both participants, having enjoyed worthy challenge without either suffering defeat's sting. Chapel bells announce compline as chess pieces return to their storage box. Knights rise from various activities, conversation subsiding as focus shifts toward day's final devotional obligation. This transition from secular recreation to sacred observance happens without comment or complaint. Regular rhythm accepted as natural rather than imposed requirement. Compline brings different atmosphere than days' earlier services. Candles, providing primary illumination. Voices naturally lowered in recognition of approaching night. Prayers focusing on protection through darkness and examination of day's actions. The office concludes with Marian antiphon appropriate to liturgical season, sung rather than spoken, melding individual voices into communal expression that echoes gently against stone walls. When formal prayers conclude, silence extends naturally rather than breaking immediately into conversation. Each participant takes private moment for additional prayer or contemplation before departing chapel for night's rest. This personal conclusion, this individual closing of spiritual accounts before sleep, represents nightly discipline beyond institutional requirement. You remain slightly longer than others, using quiet darkness for deeper reflection on day's events and decisions. This practice, this regular spiritual accounting, helps maintain internal alignment between action and conviction, preventing gradual separation between professed values and actual conduct. Father Gregory moves quietly through chapel, completing practical duties, extinguishing excess candles, securing valuable items, checking perpetual lamp's oil level. His movements flow with practiced efficiency that creates minimal disturbance to those still engaged in prayer. When your own devotions conclude, the priest approaches with characteristic gentle presence. Your thoughts seem particularly focused. This evening, he observes, invitation rather than intrusion into private spiritual matters. Council discussions raise questions about balancing preparation against providence, you respond, knowing the priest's discretion equals his wisdom. When prudence becomes distrust of divine protection, or when faith becomes excuse for negligent stewardship, Father Gregory nods understanding. The ancient tension between human responsibility and divine sovereignty. Scripture offers examples supporting both anticipatory action and faithful surrender depending on circumstance. This theological framework, contextual wisdom rather than absolute formula, aligns with your own developing understanding that knightly virtue requires discernment beyond rigid rules. Different situations demand different applications of fundamental principles. Maturity recognizes appropriate response, where inexperience seeks simple universals. I find comfort in the warrior King David's example, you confess quietly. A man who both prepared meticulously for battle and composed psalms, surrendering outcomes to God's judgment. A worthy model indeed for Christian knights, the priest agrees. Perhaps tomorrow's readings might explore his approach to uncertain threats, if afternoon duties permit your attendance. You express gratitude for this considerate suggestion before bidding good night. The priest's willingness to adapt spiritual instruction toward practical challenges facing knights demonstrates his exceptional pastoral sensitivity, meeting souls where actual struggles occur rather than imposing abstract theological concepts, disconnected from lived experience. The castle corridors lie mostly silent as you make your way toward your chamber, occasional guard patrols providing reminder that vigilance continues through darkness. This constant watchfulness, this refusal to surrender security entirely to chance or providence, reflects responsible stewardship of lives entrusted to baronial protection. Your chamber welcomes with familiar simplicity, candle left burning, by a conscientious servant providing sufficient light for final evening preparations. You remove outer garments and boots, performing abbreviated ablutions from water basin before kneeling beside your bed for private night prayers beyond communal devotions recently completed. These personal prayers include specific petitions absent from formal liturgy, request for guidance regarding border concerns, thanksgiving for Thomas's development, remembrance of family members distant but not forgotten, commendation of departed comrades whose sacrifices secured current peace, however temporary it might prove. Prayer concludes with surrender of consciousness into divine protection, a warrior's recognition that vigilance has appropriate limits, that some portions of existence require trust beyond personal control. Into thy hands I commend my spirit, you whisper, echoing Christ's own surrender while acknowledging the practical necessity of rest for effective service when morning arrives. Sleep comes without struggle, your body recognizing opportunity for recovery after days' varied exertions. Dreams blend memory and imagination. Tournament victories alongside childhood streams. Battle formations intermingled with chapel architecture. faces of current companions merging with those long departed. You wake briefly during deepest night, momentary alertness triggered by distant sound, quickly identified as normal castle operation rather than emergency. This capacity, immediate awareness followed by accurate assessment, develops through years of campaign experience where survival often depends on distinguishing genuine threats from routine noises. Before returning to sleep, you offer brief prayer for night guards, maintaining vigilance while others rest. Another aspect of nightly solidarity, rarely mentioned in romantic tales, but essential to communal security. These quiet acknowledgements, this recognition of interdependent service, reinforce bonds that transform individual warriors into effective protective community. Morning arrives with gentle inevitability, pre-dawn light gradually defining chambers, familiar contours. Your body wakes naturally at matin's hour, internal rhythm established through years of disciplined observance. The cycle begins again, prayer before action, spiritual centering before worldly engagement, private devotion before public service. Feet touch cold stone floor as another day of nightly vocation commences. Distinct from yesterday in specific activities but identical in fundamental purpose. This continuity, this faithful recommitment to consistent values through changing circumstances, defines true knighthood beyond theatrical gestures or temporary enthusiasms. You dress with efficient reverence, preparing both body and spirit for duties awaiting attention. The chamber window reveals pink-tinged clouds announcing dawn's approach. Divine artistry repainting familiar landscape, with colors simultaneously new and eternally recurring. This balance, appreciating creation's beauty while preparing for practical service, symbolizes integrated spirituality appropriate to nightly vocation. Neither ascetic withdrawal nor worldly immersion, but mindful engagement with physical reality informed by transcendent perspective. Candle flame illuminates your path through still dark corridors toward chapel where another day's devotions await. Different challenges will emerge before sunset. Administrative decisions, training responsibilities, perhaps response to developing border situation. But this foundation remains constant, coming before God in recognition of ultimate authority, beyond temporal power or personal capacity. The chapel door opens to familiar sacred space, perpetual lamp's steady flame, greeting your arrival with silent welcome. You light additional candles, their gentle illumination pushing back physical darkness, while spiritual discipline addresses internal shadows. Opening Psalter to appropriate morning readings, you begin again the ancient words connecting this moment to countless others through history and across Christendom. Venit, exultemus Domino. Come, let us sing to the Lord. The invitation to approach divine presence with both reverence and joy establishes proper perspective for all that follows. Here lies the essential foundation of nightly vocation beyond skills and obligations. Recognition that all earthly service ultimately draws meaning from eternal purpose. That temporary security merely creates space wherein souls might orient toward permanent truth. This understanding doesn't diminish practical duties, but elevates them, transforming mundane activities into meaningful participation in divine order. Armor maintenance becomes stewardship of protective capability. Training squires becomes transmission of virtuous tradition. Border patrol becomes guardian service to innocent communities. As psalms continue flowing from memory and written text, morning light strengthens gradually outside stained glass windows. Individual panes transform ordinary sunlight into jeweled patterns across stone floor. visual reminder of how divine illumination transforms common existence into something altogether more beautiful when properly received and ordered. Your voice continues the ancient words, soul settling into sacred rhythm established long before your birth and continuing long after your departure. This is knighthood's invisible foundation, not the visible trappings of armor and weaponry, not even the recognized virtues of courage and loyalty, but this quiet communion that orients every other aspect of vocation toward its proper end. Father, Gregory arrives as your personal devotions conclude, nodding approval of your diligence while beginning preparations for communal prime when household will gather shortly. Your consistent observance encourages others, he comments quietly. Sir Thomas now attends matins regularly, following example more than instruction. This information, that personal discipline influences others without deliberate teaching, brings quiet satisfaction deeper than any battlefield recognition. Combat prowess eventually fades with age. Transmitted virtue continues influence beyond individual mortality. Standing back into the world awaits council meetings, training sessions, inspection duties, perhaps preparation for conflict, should border concerns escalate beyond diplomatic resolution. Each responsibility will receive appropriate attention. Each decision reflect best judgment formed through experience and consultation. Yet this foundation, this sacred hour before action, remains central rather than peripheral to knightly identity, not merely religious obligation fulfilled alongside secular duties, but essential integration point where temporal service connects to eternal purpose, where individual action finds meaning within divine order. As household members begin arriving, for prime, you move to your assigned position, neither prominently forward nor modestly hidden, but placed according to established order that acknowledges rank without celebrating personal importance. This positioning, this acceptance of proper place within community, reflects spiritual maturity developed through years balancing appropriate pride in vocation with humble recognition of limited individual significance. Baron Edmund enters with family members, taking position that acknowledges his authority while placing all beneath God's ultimate sovereignty. This proper ordering, this visible reminder that even highest earthly power remains subordinate to divine judgment, creates context wherein knightly service finds appropriate expression. The service begins, familiar Latin phrases flowing from assembled community. Your voice joins others, individual identity temporarily subsumed within collective expression. Another aspect of spiritual discipline that balances knightly emphasis on personal capability and responsibility. Sunlight strengthens outside, day advancing toward duties awaiting attention after devotions conclude. This transition, this movement between worlds of contemplation and action, defines knightly spirituality, neither permanent withdrawal nor thoughtless immersion, but mindful integration, wherein each domain informs the other. As final blessing concludes formal observance, you prepare to re-enter active service, carrying morning centering influence into decisions and interactions throughout coming hours. The chapel door opens to Castle Bailey already bustling with activity, physical, representation of threshold between contemplative and active aspects of integrated vocation. You cross this threshold with practiced intention, embodying knighthood's fullest expression, spiritual foundations supporting practical service, contemplative wisdom guiding active engagement, personal devotion strengthening communal protection. Not the romanticized knight of minstrel's imagining, but the complete warrior whose effectiveness flows from internal integration as much as external skill. The day's first task awaits attention, inventory of emergency supplies discussed in yesterday's council. You move towards storerooms with purposeful stride, morning prayers still echoing in mind, even as practical considerations engage full attention. This seamless transition, this unbroken continuity between devotion and duty, represents knighthood's mature spirituality beyond formal observance into lived integration. Castle residents acknowledge your passing with appropriate gestures, respect, without obsequiousness, recognition of authority earned through service rather than demanded through position. This relationship, this mutual recognition of interdependent roles within community, reflects proper social functioning that knighthood exists to maintain and protect. The morning sun warms your face momentarily as you cross open courtyard. Divine provision of light and heat without which human activity could not continue. Even this simple experience carries spiritual significance when perceived through contemplative awareness. Reminder of fundamental dependency, often forgotten during confident action. Storeroom doors open to reveal practical focus for mornings. Efforts, sacks of grain requiring inspection, barrels of preserved food needing inventory confirmation, medicinal herbs whose potency must be assessed before emergency might render such evaluation too late. This work, unglamorous but essential, represents knighthood's practical expression beyond symbolic gestures or ceremonial functions. You begin systematic examination with characteristic thoroughness, external actions flowing from internal discipline, established through years of integrated practice. This is knighthood's daily reality, responsibility embraced without complaint, duty fulfilled without audience, service rendered without immediate recognition. The work continues through morning hours. Spiritual foundations supporting practical service, just as castle foundations support visible structures above. Invisible yet essential, contemplative discipline enables effective action, not separate domains, but integrated aspects of complete knightly vocation, expressed through ordinary activities performed with extraordinary commitment. As midday approaches, chapel bells announce sext, invitation to pause worldly concerns for spiritual recentering. Unlike dawn's extended devotions, this briefer observance provides momentary realignment rather than foundational establishment, maintenance rather than creation of contemplative awareness. You complete immediate task before responding to summons, balancing respect for spiritual discipline with responsible completion of practical duties. This discernment, this ability to determine appropriate prioritization in specific circumstances rather than applying rigid formula, represents mature integration of knightly spirituality within active vocation. Making way toward chapel, you notice Sir Thomas directing squires to pause training and attend prayers. Another small confirmation that values transmit through demonstrated example more effectively than verbal instruction alone. The young knight catches your observation and straightens slightly, still seeking approval despite changed status. Your slight nod communicates both recognition of proper action and encouragement toward continued development. Subtle interaction, containing volumes of meaning, established through years of shared understanding. This mentorship, this ongoing guidance beyond formal training relationship, represents another aspect of knightly responsibility rarely featured in romantic chronicles. Inside, the chapel. Coolness provides welcome relief from increasing spring warmth outside. The space feels different at midday than dawn, brighter physically, but somehow less intensely focused spiritually. Communal obligation rather than voluntary devotion setting predominant tone. Father Gregory leads abbreviated service with efficient reverence. balancing liturgical requirements with practical recognition that working household cannot devote extensive time to midday observance. This accommodation, this realistic adjustment of spiritual practices to community circumstances, demonstrates wisdom beyond rigid application of theoretical ideals. You participate fully despite brevity, allowing ancient words to reorient attention toward eternal matters momentarily obscured by morning's practical concerns. This balance, this regular recalibration between temporal and transcendent, maintains proper perspective necessary for integrated nightly vocation. Service concludes with blessing that sends participants back to various duties with renewed purposefulness. You remain briefly for additional private prayer regarding specific concerns, border situation, mentorship responsibilities, family matters requiring correspondence. This customization, this personal application of spiritual practices toward actual circumstances, prevents devotion from becoming empty ritual, performed without meaningful engagement. Returning to afternoon duties with recalibrated perspective, you continue systematic preparation for potential crisis while maintaining appropriate current operations. This dual awareness, addressing immediate responsibilities while preparing for possible futures, characterizes mature leadership beyond reactive response or disconnected planning. When evening finally arrives, Vespers provides another opportunity for spiritual realignment before day concludes. The service, more elaborate than midday, but less extensive than morning observance, offers appropriate transition between active engagement and approaching rest. Candlelight illuminates chapel, interior, as daylight fades outside. Visual reminder of how spiritual illumination sustains awareness when natural light diminishes. The ancient prayers acknowledge day's conclusion while seeking protection through coming darkness, practical recognition of human vulnerability within divine care. Following communal devotions, you make customary visit to castle battlements, combining evening inspection with opportunity for quiet contemplation overlooking surrounding countryside. The landscape stretches toward distant horizon, villages and fields gradually disappearing into twilight shadows. Visual reminder of broader context beyond castle walls. Stars appear gradually overhead, eternal patterns unchanged by temporary, human concerns below. This perspective, this momentary transcendence of immediate circumstances, provides valuable counterbalance to today's necessarily focused attention on specific details and obligations. A guard approaches with appropriate salute, providing evening report before continuing regular patrol. This brief interaction, professional yet personal, formal yet genuine, represents proper relationship between senior knight and soldiers under indirect command. Mutual respect within clear authority structure, maintained without unnecessary assertion of rank. After completing circuit of battlements, you return to more communal evening activities, shared meal, limited recreation, final prayers before well-earned rest. Each element carries both practical function and deeper significance within integrated nightly existence. Nutrition supporting physical capability, measured fellowship, maintaining social bonds, spiritual conclusion preparing for conscious surrender, to necessary vulnerability during sleep. As night fully claims the land, Compline brings day's devotional cycle to completion. The prayers, focusing particularly on protection through darkness and examination of day's actions, provide appropriate transition between conscious activity and approaching rest. Final antiphon rises in gentle harmony, individual voices blending into communal expression that transcends personal limitation. Returning to your chamber after final devotions, Preparation for sleep includes both practical activities and spiritual conclusion, washing day's dust from face and hands while also examining conscience for required amendments.